The great hall of the alien palace glowed with silver light from the tall crystal windows. The people of the royal court had gathered in rows of elegant seats, their eyes turned to the center stage where the royal throne stood. The alien princess, Serenia, sat tall in her ceremonial robes of rich teal blue, a crown of star metal resting upon her head. Her people waited in silence for her choice, the most important moment of the age. She was to select her life partner, one who would not only stand at her side but also strengthen her people's alliances across the stars. Serenia's eyes were calm but sharp as she scanned the rows of alien suitors brought from distant worlds. Princes, generals, and lords had all come to prove their worth, each hoping the ancient bond crystals would mark them as chosen. The bond crystals, placed in a silver bowl on a pedestal before the throne, were said to glow only when a true match stood close. It was a tradition older than memory, never wrong, never questioned. Whoever the crystals responded to would be fated as Serenia's mate. Whispers filled the hall as the first candidates were called forward. One by one they stood before the princess, each full of pride and hope. But the crystals lay still and silent, refusing every hand, every presence. Serenia kept her expression calm, though her heart grew heavy. She knew what her people expected. They wanted her to pick a prince of a strong empire, someone with power, someone who would secure their future. Yet the crystals cared nothing for politics. They listened only to fate. And then it happened. When all alien suitors had failed, the crystals began to glow with sudden, startling light. Gasps filled the chamber. Heads turned in confusion, for the glow came not when Serenia faced the noble alien lords, but when her eyes fell on someone else entirely. Standing far in the corner, almost forgotten among the foreign guests, was a human soldier. His name was Lieutenant James Hale. He had not come as a suitor at all. He was part of Earth's delegation, a simple protector, a guard for his ambassador. He wore no crown, no jewels, only the plain black uniform of a soldier. And yet, when Serenia's gaze landed on him, the crystals blazed as if set aflame. The hall exploded with voices. Some laughed in disbelief. Others cried out in outrage. The bond crystals had never been wrong in all of history. Yet they had chosen a human, an outsider, a warrior from a young and untested world. Serenia herself froze, her eyes widening. She stood slowly, her robes whispering across the floor, and walked to the pedestal. The glow grew stronger with every step she took toward the human soldier. James Hale stiffened, uncertain, caught in a sea of alien stares. He had never expected to draw such attention. He had come only to guard, not to become the center of destiny. When Serenia stopped before him, the crystals shone so brightly the court could no longer deny it. Whispers turned into shocked silence. All eyes were on the princess, waiting for her acceptance of the ancient bond. Yet instead of joy, instead of grace, her face hardened. Her pride burned hotter than the light of the crystals. She looked James in the eyes, and her voice rang clear across the hall. "You, my mate? I think you've got the wrong alien, human." The words cracked like thunder. The silence broke into a storm of gasps and murmurs. Some aliens nodded in agreement, offended at the thought of a human taking a royal place. Others stared in awe at the boldness of fate. James's jaw tightened, but he did not lower his head. His pride as a soldier demanded that he stand tall, even while humiliated, before an alien court. He felt the sting of her words, but he kept his composure. He was no fool. He understood her rejection came from shock, from the weight of tradition, not from cruelty alone. The alien king, Serenia's father, shifted uneasily on his throne. He could not openly deny the crystals, yet neither could he force his daughter to accept a mate she despised. His eyes studied James with suspicion. Humans were known for their stubborn courage, but they were still young among the stars, considered rough and uncultured by many. Could such a man truly stand beside a princess? The king doubted it. Yet the bond crystals glowed still, refusing to dim, declaring the human chosen. Serenia turned sharply away from James and addressed her people. "This must be an error. The crystals are old, their power misunderstood. I will not accept this fate. I will not bind myself to a human. Her voice carried strength, and many of her people nodded, comforted by her rejection. Pride swelled in her chest, for she had defended the honor of her crown. Yet somewhere deep inside, behind the walls of pride, a small unease took root. The crystals had never been wrong before. Why now? James, meanwhile, kept silent. He wished, only to vanish back into the shadows where he belonged. But fate had placed him here, under the glare of thousands of eyes. The ambassador of Earth leaned forward, whispering sharply, "Say something, Lieutenant, at least defend your honor." But James shook his head slightly. He had no wish to argue, no wish to force himself upon anyone, especially not a proud, alien princess who clearly wanted nothing to do with him. He simply bowed his head slightly to Serenia and stepped back. The hall buzzed with conflicting voices. Some said the human had been insulted enough and should leave. Others whispered that fate could not be ignored. A few, more curious than proud, wondered what would happen if Serenia spent time with him. Perhaps the bond crystals could be tested further. The king raised his hand for silence and spoke in a heavy voice. "The bond crystals have spoken, yet my daughter rejects the choice. We will not decide this in haste. The matter will remain open. Until then, the human soldier shall remain among us." The decision stirred unrest, but none dared challenge the king. Serenia's face was calm, but her heart burned. She had been humiliated by fate in front of her people. She could not forgive it, not yet. As she returned to her throne, she glanced once more at James. He stood quietly, shoulders straight, his face unreadable. She expected anger, or shame, or desperate pleading. Instead, she saw only calm resolve, the kind of strength that did not need to shout. It unsettled her more than she wished to admit. When the ceremony ended, Serenia retreated to her private chambers. She paced the silver floors, her robes trailing like rivers of light. She spoke to herself, her voice low but fierce. A human? Of all the beings in the galaxy, the crystals choose a human soldier? What kind of cruel trick is this? She clenched her fists, her pride wounded. She thought of James's steady eyes, the way he had not begged, not argued, not even defended himself after her rejection. It was strange. Most suitors, when rejected, would protest or collapse in shame. The human had simply stood there, strong as stone. It angered her that she noticed. Meanwhile, James returned to the guest quarters prepared for Earth's delegation. He removed his gloves, sat heavily on the bench, and breathed out slowly. His fellow soldier clapped him on the back. "Well, Lieutenant, looks like you're famous now. The first human to get rejected by an alien princess in front of an entire court." James chuckled dryly, though the sting still burned inside. Not exactly the kind of history I wanted to make. Yet he could not shake the image of the glowing crystals. They had shone so bright, so sure, as if they knew something no one else did. He did not believe in fate, but he could not ignore what he had seen. Night fell over the alien city, its towers of crystal gleaming under the twin moons. Serenia stood on her balcony, staring at the stars. She told herself again and again that the crystals were wrong, that her path was her own. Yet the memory of James's quiet strength returned unbidden. She shook her head, forcing the thought away. She was a princess. She had duties, responsibilities, pride. She would not be bound to a human. And yet, the stars gave no answer, only silence. Far below, James looked up at the same sky, unaware that the princess was doing the same. Two souls from different worlds, bound by a light neither asked for, stood at the edge of a story neither yet understood. The next morning, the palace was alive with whispers. The news of the bond crystals glowing for a human had spread across the city like fire through dry grass. Merchants in the markets argued about it. Scholars in their towers tried to explain. Yet soldiers in the barracks laughed and mocked the idea. Some said it was fate, others said it was madness. But all of them waited to see what the princess would do. Serenia kept her face calm as she walked through the palace halls, though inside her heart churned with pride and doubt. Her attendants followed silently, careful not to speak unless spoken, till she had slept little, her mind restless. The glow of the crystals haunted her, as did the sight of the human soldier who had caused it. She told herself again and again that it meant nothing, yet the unease refused to leave. At the morning council, the king sat at the head of the table, his voice heavy with thought. "The matter of the bond cannot be ignored," he said. "The crystals have chosen, but my daughter rejects the choice. We must find clarity before this weakens the trust of our people." One advisor leaned forward. "Perhaps the bond can be tested. If the princess spends time near the human and finds no harmony, the crystals may dim. Then the matter will end, and the people will see it as a mistake." Serenya's lips tightened. She did not like the idea of being forced to spend time with James Hale. Yet another voice spoke. "It may also confirm the bond, Majesty. Are you ready for such a risk?" The king's eyes turned to Serenya. "What say you, daughter?" She stood tall, her robes flowing like liquid light. "If the council doubts, then I will test the bond myself. I will prove to all that fate has no power over me. I will show that this human does not belong at my side." The king nodded slowly. "Then so it shall be. Until the truth is clear, the human will remain close to you." And so it began. James Hale received the order with quiet acceptance. The ambassador apologized to him, muttering about alien traditions and the embarrassment it caused. But James only shrugged. He was a soldier. His duty was to follow orders, even strange ones. If the princess wanted him near, then near he would be. He felt no joy in it, only a calm determination not to make things worse than they already were. The first day was awkward. Serenya walked through the palace gardens with James following at a respectful distance. She tried to ignore him, speaking only to her attendants, pretending he was not there. But the bond crystals, carried in a small case by a servant, glowed faintly every time she stepped closer to him. The servants whispered behind their hands. Serenya's pride burned hotter with each passing moment. Finally, she turned on him. "Do you enjoy this?" she demanded. James looked surprised. "Enjoy what, princess?" "Walking behind me like some shadow, making the crystals glow, watching my people whisper. Do you enjoy humiliating me?" His voice was calm. "No, princess. I don't enjoy it at all. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. I'm just following orders, same as always." Her anger faltered for a heartbeat. She had expected arrogance or pride, or some desperate attempt to win her favor. Instead, she found only honesty, steady and simple. It unsettled her, though she quickly masked it with coldness. The days that followed did little to ease her heart. No matter where she went, council halls, training grounds, or city tours, James was always there, a silent guard at her back. He did not speak unless spoken to. He did not boast, did not try to impress. He simply watched, alert and ready, as if her safety were his only concern. And then the attack came. It happened during a diplomatic mission to a nearby colony world. Serenya's ship glided down through the violet skies, its crystal hull gleaming like a star. James stood among the guards, his eyes sharp as ever. Serenya looked out the window, rehearsing the speech she would give to the colony leaders. But as they landed, the air was split by explosions. The ground shook, and black smoke rose over the city. Raiders had struck, ruthless scavengers who preyed on weak colonies. Their ships poured fire into the streets, their warriors charging with blades and rifles. The guards rushed to form a shield around Serenya, but the attack was fierce and sudden. James reacted instantly. He seized a fallen guard's weapon and moved to the princess's side. Blaster fire hissed through the air. He pulled her down behind a wall of stone just as an explosion tore the platform apart. Serenya's heart pounded as she looked at him, his face calm, his eyes sharp. "Stay low," he said firmly. "I'll get you out." Her pride bristled at being ordered, yet in that moment she obeyed without question. She followed as he guided her through the burning streets, his movements quick and precise. He covered her with fire when enemies closed in, his aim sharp, his steps sure. Twice he pushed her out of the path of danger, taking cuts and burns himself instead. Serenia could not understand it. Why would he risk himself for her after the humiliation she had given him? Any other man might have left her to fate, yet this human shielded her with his life. They reached a broken alley where the guards regrouped. The raiders pressed hard and the fight raged fierce. Serenia, trained in combat as all royals were, drew her own blade and stood beside James. For the first time she fought at his side, their movements strangely in harmony. His rifle struck down enemies at range, her blade cut down those who came close. Together they pushed back the raiders until reinforcements arrived. When the last raider fell, silence spread. The streets were scarred, but the princess still stood unharmed. James lowered his weapon, his arm bleeding from a cut. His uniform, scorched. Serenia stared at him, her breath caught. She wanted to speak, to ask why, to say something more than pride would allow, but the words would not come. That night, as they rested in the colony's safe house, Serenia sat alone, turning the small case of bond crystals in her hands. They glowed brighter than ever, as if rejoicing in the danger survived together. Her chest tightened. She had wanted to prove the crystals wrong, but every day near this human seemed to make their light stronger. James, resting nearby with his arm bandaged, said nothing. He simply kept watch, his eyes always scanning, as if her safety mattered more than his pain. Serenia looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time felt a flicker of doubt about her own pride. Perhaps the crystals were not mocking her. Perhaps they were showing her something she had refused to see. Still, she turned her head away. She could not admit it, not yet. She was a princess. She was proud, and she would not yield so easily. But the bond crystals glowed on, bright as stars in the dark. The journey back from the colony world was silent. Serenia sat in her private chamber aboard the royal ship, staring at the glowing bond crystals on the table. They pulsed softly, like a beating heart, brighter than ever since the attack. She hated the way they mocked her pride. Every time she tried to deny their choice, their light grew stronger. She remembered James shielding her with his body, remembered his steady voice guiding her through fire, remembered his hand reaching for her when the ground shook beneath them. He had been cut and burned, but he never left her side. The image would not leave her mind. She wanted to tell herself that it was only duty, only what any soldier would have done. Yet she knew it was more. The human had risked more than orders demanded. He had fought as though her life mattered above his own. Serenia's heart felt unsteady, and that unsettled her more than any enemy blade. She was not supposed to feel this way toward a human. The council, however, was not so unsettled. When they returned to the palace, voices filled the chamber once more. Some advisors praised James for saving the princess. Others warned that his presence was dangerous, that his growing closeness to her was an insult to alien traditions. The king listened with heavy silence. But Serenia noticed another figure in the council chamber, one who watched her with sharp eyes. It was Prince Kalen, a tall warrior from the Dravak Empire. He had long been expected to claim her hand. His people were strong, his armies vast. Many believed he was the most suitable choice for the princess. He himself believed it as destiny. Kalen's smile was thin as he bowed. "I am glad you are safe, princess," he said. "Though I hear it was not your guards or your own blade that saved you, but a human soldier. How curious that fate should humble you so." Serenia's eyes narrowed, but she did not answer. Kalen's words dripped with jealousy, though he masked them as politeness. He glanced at James, who stood quietly at the edge of the hall. The human did not flinch under the prince's gaze. He simply returned it with calm eyes, steady as ever. Kalen's pride bristled. In the days that followed, Kalen's presence grew heavier. He sought to remind Serenia of their history, of his people's power, of the strength a bond between their houses would bring. But Serenia felt no warmth toward him. His pride mirrored her own. Yet where her pride came from duty, his came from hunger for control. Meanwhile, she found herself noticing James more often. He remained quiet, never seeking her favor, never trying to impress. Yet his actions spoke louder than Kaelin's boasts. She saw him helping a young servant carry a heavy tray without being asked. She saw him sparring with alien guards, holding his own against warriors twice his size. She saw him walk the palace halls at night, checking the shadows, never once lowering his guard. And one evening when she thought no one was watching, she saw him sit by a wounded alien soldier in the infirmary, speaking softly, offering words of encouragement. The soldier smiled through his pain, comforted. Serenia stood unseen, her heart stirred by a warmth she did not want to admit. The bond crystals glowed brighter with every passing day. But Kaelin noticed too. His jealousy grew like fire, and soon it burned into action. One night Serenia was summoned to meet Kaelin in the royal gardens. The air was still, the fountains quiet. Kaelin stood tall beneath the starlight, his armor gleaming. "You waste your time with this human," he said sharply. "He is beneath you. The crystals are wrong. They mock our traditions. You know it. As well as I." Serenia's voice was cold. "The crystals have never been wrong. They are wrong now," Kaelin snapped. "Or perhaps they are being forced." She tilted her head. "Forced? By whom?" Kaelin's smile was thin and cruel. "By him, by that human. He has tricked you. He has tricked fate itself. And I will prove it." Before Serenia could reply, Kaelin stepped close. "When the time comes, Princess, you will see who truly deserves you. And it will not be him." His eyes glowed with a dangerous promise. The next day, Serenia felt unease pressing at her heart. She wanted to speak to James, to warn him, but pride held her tongue. She told herself he did not need her concern. He was only a soldier, only temporary. And yet the thought of Kaelin's threat made her restless. That night, her unease became reality. James was patrolling the lower halls when the attack came. Shadows moved swiftly, silent assassins sent by Kaelin. They struck with blades dipped in poison, their steps deadly quiet. James reacted instantly, blocking a strike with his rifle and driving his attacker back. Another came from behind, and James rolled, his training guiding his every move. The fight was fierce, the assassins skilled, but James's will was iron. He fought with the calm of a man who had faced death before and would face it again. Blood marked his arm, his side, but still he stood. Still he fought. The clash of steel reached Serenia's ears, and she rushed to the hall, her guards at her side. When she arrived, she saw James standing in the center of fallen assassins, his chest heaving, his body wounded but unyielding. The bond crystals she carried in her hand glowed so bright they lit the hall like fire. Her heart twisted at the sight. He had nearly died. For her. Because of Kaelin. James turned to her, his voice rough but steady. "You're safe." "It was all," he said. No complaint, no question, no demand, just those two words. And for the first time, Serenia felt her pride tremble. Later, as he lay in the infirmary, his wounds being treated, Serenia sat by his side. She watched his chest rise and fall, the steady beat of life refusing to surrender. Her hand brushed. The glowing crystals and tears threatened her eyes. Why, she thought. Why does a human show more courage, more loyalty, more heart than princes and lords who were born to claim me? Why does fate shine so brightly upon him? She wanted to deny it, wanted to push the thought away. But the truth pressed harder every day. The bond crystals had never been wrong. And her own heart was beginning to betray her pride. Kaelin's fury, however, was only growing. He had failed to end the human in shadows, but he would not stop. He began to plan something greater, something that would force Serenia to choose, between her pride, her people, and the human who had already risked everything for her. The turning point had arrived, and Serenia knew it. Fate was moving too, fast to be ignored. And in her heart she feared that soon she would have to make a choice that would change everything. The palace had grown tense after the attack on James. Whispers spread in every corridor, and the people argued about what it meant. Some said the bond crystals glowed brighter because the human had proven himself. Others said it was a dangerous sign that fate was trying to twist the future of the royal family. The king ordered more guards around Serenia. But no order could quiet the unease in the air. Serenia herself walked the halls with restless steps. Her mind was heavy, her pride at war with her heart. She could no longer deny the truth she had seen with her own eyes. James Hale had stood against assassins meant to kill him, bleeding yet unbroken, and his only words had been about her safety. That moment had carved itself into her chest like fire. Every time she touched the bond crystals, they burned bright, as if laughing at her stubbornness. Kalen, however, was not finished. His first attempt to remove James had failed, and it had only made the human look stronger in the princess's eyes. The thought of it filled him with rage. He was a prince of the Dravak Empire, born to rule, born to claim Serenia's hand. He would not allow a human soldier from a young planet to steal what was his by right. And so he plotted again, this time with no subtlety, no shadows. This time, he would trap them both and prove once and for all that the human did not belong. Thalam. Chance came when Serenia and James were ordered to inspect a remote moon colony that had gone silent. The colony was important, a source of rare metals used for starship drives. Serenia agreed to lead the mission, and James, still healing but refusing to rest, took his place at her side. The king hesitated but finally gave his blessing. It was, after all, the princess's duty to oversee her people. The ship descended upon the barren moon, its surface gray and lifeless beneath a pale sun. The colony stood silent, its towers broken, its landing pads empty. No voices greeted them, no lights burned in the windows. Serenia felt unease ripple down her spine as she stepped out with her guards. James walked beside her, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning every shadow. "This feels wrong," he said quietly. She nodded. "It is too quiet." They entered the colony square, their footsteps echoing against stone. Suddenly the silence shattered. Energy nets crackled into place around the square, cutting them off from their ship. Dozens of soldiers in Dravak armor stepped from the shadows, their weapons raised. And at the front of them stood Prince Kalen, his smile cruel. "Welcome, princess," he said, his voice carrying across the square. "I knew you would come. I knew you would bring him." His gaze burned at James, full of hate. Now the truth will be shown. The guards rushed to defend Serenia, but Kalen's soldiers were too many. Blaster fire filled the air, and chaos broke out. Serenia drew her blade, its edge glowing with royal power, and fought with skill. But the enemy pressed hard. James fired with precision, covering her flank, his movements sharp despite his wounds. Kalen stepped forward, drawing his own blade, its black edge gleaming. "Face me, human. Let us see if fate truly favors you." James did not flinch. He met Kalen's eyes and raised his rifle, but the prince was fast, striking with fury. The fight clashed in the center of the square, steel against steel, energy against fire. Serenia's heart pounded as she watched James meet Kalen's strength with his own, refusing to bend. The battle raged across the colony. The royal guards fell one by one, outnumbered. Serenia fought beside James now, her pride forgotten in the heat of survival. She moved with him, their strikes flowing together like two parts of one whole. Where his rifle cut down enemies at range, her blade protected him at close. Where she faltered, he shielded her. Where he stumbled, she struck for him. For the first time, Serenia felt the truth of the bond not only in her heart, but in her body. Fighting with James was like fighting with her other half. Their movements fit, their spirits burned as one. The bond crystals in her belt glowed so bright they shook with power. Kalen saw it and roared with rage. He pressed harder, his strikes raining down on James. But the human did not fall. He bled, his body strained, yet his eyes never lost their fire. Every time Kalen knocked him down, James rose again. Every time Kalen tried to strike Serenia, James blocked the path with his own body. "You don't belong here," Kalen shouted as their blades clashed. James's voice was steady, his breath harsh. "I don't care about belonging. I care about protecting her." The words struck Serenia's heart like thunder. For so long, suitors had spoken of alliances, of power, of bloodlines. None had spoken so simply, so honestly. James fought not for a crown, not for glory, but for her. And in that moment Serenya's pride broke. She understood why the crystals had chosen him. It was not his blood, not his birth. It was his spirit. With new fire, Serenya joined James against Kaelin. Their blades struck as one, their movements unstoppable. Kaelin staggered under their combined strength, his fury turning to desperation. With one final strike, Serenya's blade knocked his weapon away and James pressed his rifle to the prince's chest. The square fell silent. The remaining Dravak soldiers hesitated, then lowered their weapons when Kaelin dropped to his knees. Serenya stood tall, her blade at Kaelin's throat. Her voice was steady. You tried to twist fate. You tried to murder the chosen. But fate does not bend to pride or greed. It chose him, and I will not deny it any longer. The crystals on her belt glowed like a star, filling the square with light. Every soldier, every survivor, every watcher saw the truth. The bond was real, undeniable. James lowered his weapon slowly, breathing hard, his body shaking with exhaustion. Serenya turned to him, her eyes no longer cold, no longer proud, but filled with something new, acceptance and something deeper she dared not name yet. We fought as one, she said softly. He gave a tired smile. And we survived as one. The battle was won, but Serenya knew the greater test still lay ahead. They would return to the palace, to the court, to the king. She would have to stand before them all and speak the truth she had denied for so long. And she would have to choose, not with pride but with her heart. For the first time she was not afraid of that choice. The journey back to the palace was tense, though victorious. The skies of the moon colony glowed faintly under the twin suns as Serenya and James sat in the royal ship. Their bodies were tired, bruised, and burned from the battle, but their spirits carried a strange light. The bond crystals on Serenya's belt pulsed softly, steady and sure, as if to remind them both that fate had spoken and could not be ignored. Serenya sat quietly, her hands resting on her knees, her mind replaying every moment of the fight. James had been at her side through every strike, every shadow, every danger. His bravery, his calm, his unyielding care, it had broken through the walls she had built around her heart. She had always prided herself on her strength, on her independence, but the human had shown her something different. That strength could be measured in courage and loyalty, not in titles or crowns. James looked at her quietly, noticing the tension in her shoulders. He did not speak, for words were not needed. Their bond had grown in the fire of battle, in shared danger, in trust earned silently. When the ship landed in the palace's grand courtyard, word had already spread of Kaelin's defeat. The palace was alive with murmurs and gasps as citizens and nobles gathered to witness the outcome. Some cheered for the victory, some whispered anxiously, afraid of the human who had survived where princes had failed. But all eyes were on the princess and the human standing beside her. The king awaited them in the great hall, his expression grave but his eyes betraying relief. He had expected a human to fail, to fall, to prove the bond crystals wrong. Instead, they returned victorious, the human intact, the princess alive, and the rival prince defeated. Serenya stepped forward, her robes flowing, her crown catching the light of the crystal chandeliers. She held the bond crystals in her hand, their glow steady and brilliant. "Father," she began, her voice clear, "the human chosen by the bond crystals has proven his worth. He has risked his life for me, without thought of reward or glory. He has stood against your enemies, against mine, and against those who wished me harm. I can no longer deny what the crystals show. I have been proud, but I was wrong to doubt." The hall grew silent. Even the advisors who had opposed the human stared at her in awe. She turned slightly, facing James, who stood tall despite his wounds. Her voice softened, no longer proud or cold. "If fate chose you, then I choose you too. Not because I must, but because I want to." James felt a warmth spread through him. a calm certainty that had grown over the past days. He stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Princess Serenia, I never asked for this. I never wanted to force myself upon you. But I will stand by you, always. If you accept me, I will honor you, protect you, and walk beside you through whatever comes." The king rose from his throne, his eyes glinting with pride. "So it is true. The bond crystals have never been wrong, and the princess has spoken her choice. Let it be known. The human Lieutenant James Hale is recognized as the mate of Princess Serenia." Gasps and whispers spread through the court. Some nobles were shocked, some were amazed. But the bond crystals glowed brighter than ever, their light filling the great hall. It was as if the universe itself had agreed, affirming the union. Kalen, brought before the court in chains, glared at James with hatred. His pride had been shattered. The defeat, the exposure, and the clear favor of the bond crystals left him, with no words. The king decreed that Kalen's claim was null, that he had acted against the princess and the empire's laws, and that his people must respect the choice made. The rival prince was removed from the court, and his influence waned. As the people witnessed the strength of fate's decision, Serenia stepped closer to James, her hand brushing against his. The crowd seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in the brilliance of the bond crystals. "You are not like anyone I have known," she said softly. "Your courage, your heart, your spirit. It is unlike any prince or lord I have met. I cannot ignore it. I will not. And now, I want to stand with you, beside you, as equals." James took her hand gently, holding it as if it were the most precious thing in the galaxy. "And I want the same. I will walk with you, fight with you, and face whatever comes. Together." The hall erupted in celebration. The people cheered not only for the victory over Kalen, but for the courage of a human who had earned his place beside a royal princess. It was a moment unlike any other in history, a bond not made of politics or tradition, but of trust, courage, and spirit. Over the following days, Serenia and James were formally recognized by the court. Advisors who had doubted the human's worth now spoke of his honor and valor. The citizens marveled at the princess's choice, and the bond crystals glowed constantly in the palace, a symbol of the unbreakable connection between the human and the alien royal. The princess's pride had not vanished, but it had transformed. She no longer felt the need to hide her heart behind walls. She had learned that strength could exist in humility, in acceptance, and in the recognition of true courage. And James had learned that being human did not mean being weak, but that one could stand among stars and claim a place of honor through action and heart. Together they walked through the palace gardens, the twin moons casting soft light on the stone paths. James carried a small wound on his arm, and Serenia's fingers brushed it gently, a quiet gesture that spoke volumes. They did not need words to understand each other. Every glance, every movement, every shared breath was a reminder of the battles they had faced, the dangers they had survived, and the bond they had earned. The court celebrated for days, but the true celebration was quiet, in moments between missions and duties. A shared cup of tea in the palace balcony, a brief sparring session in the training halls, a walk along the crystal corridors. Each moment deepened their connection, showing that a bond forged in danger could thrive in peace. And though the galaxy was vast, filled with wars, challenges, and unknown dangers, Serenia and James faced it together. They had proven that the human spirit could stand equal to the mightiest alien warrior, that courage, loyalty, and honor were not bound by species or title, that sometimes the most unlikely bonds were the strongest of all. In the end, the bond crystals glowed continuously, a living symbol of what had been chosen. And for the first time, Serenia smiled without restraint, her eyes meeting James's with certainty. The future was no longer uncertain, no longer bound by pride or doubt. Fate had chosen, and they had chosen each other in return. The palace echoed with a single truth that would be remembered for generations. Sometimes the human heart, quiet, strong, and unyielding, was the greatest power in the galaxy. Together, they would face all worlds, all challenges, and all threats, Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were a story that would be told for centuries. The human and the alien princess united by fate, courage, and a bond no force could break. And as the twin moons rose over the crystal towers of the palace, Serenia whispered softly just to James, "I thought I knew what strength was, but now I see it in you." James smiled, taking her hand in his. "And I thought humans were small, fragile, and weak, until I stood beside you." The galaxy had changed that day. Not because of war or conquest, but because two souls had refused to bow to tradition, fear, or pride. They had chosen each other, and that choice would echo across the stars forever.